Chapter 13 Moment of Truth. The smile froze on Hero's face. He lowered his head, as though in shame. After a minute or so passed, shrouded in heavy silence, he finally answered. Yes. I thought that if I do it when you sleep, you won't have to suffer. Unseen to him, a bitter grin appeared on Sunny's face. A long sigh escaped from the young soldier's lips. He rested his back against the cave's wall, still not looking up. I don't expect you to forgive me. This sin, too, will be mine to bear. But please, if you can, find it in your heart to understand. If things were different, I would have gladly faced that monster to let you escape. But my life does not belong to me alone. There is an unencompassable duty I am sworn to fulfill. Until it's done, I cannot allow myself to die. Sunny laughed. You people. Look at you! Planning to kill me and still insisting on having a good excuse. How very convenient! I really hate hypocrites like you the most. Why don't you be honest for once? Don't give me that crap, just say it. I'm going to kill you because it's easy. I'm going to kill you because I want to survive. Hero closed his eyes, his face full of sadness. I'm sorry. I knew you wouldn't be able to understand. What's there to understand? Sunny leaned forward, anger coursing through his veins. Tell me, why do I have to die? The young soldier finally looked up. Even though he couldn't see in the dark, he turned his face in the direction of Sunny's voice. That man was a villain, but he was also right. The scent of blood is too heavy on you. It will attract the beast. You can just let me go, you know. We'll part ways. After that, whether or not the monster finds me won't be your problem. Hero shook his head. Dying in that creature's maw is too cruel a fate. It's better if I do it myself. You are my responsibility, after all. How noble of you! Sunny leaned back, dejected. After a short while, he quietly said, You know, when I just came here, I was ready to die. After all, in this whole world. 2 worlds, actually. There's not a single soul who cares whether I live or die. When I'm gone, no one will be sad. No one will even remember that I existed. There was a forlorn look on his face. A moment later, however, it was gone, replaced by mirth. But then I changed my mind. Somewhere along the way, I decided to survive. I must survive, no matter what. Hero gave him a thoughtful look. To live a life worth remembering? Sunny grinned. A dark gleam appeared in his eyes. No. To spite you all. The young soldier was silent for a few moments, then nodded, accepting this answer. He rose to his feet. Don't worry. I'll make it quick. Aren't you overly confident? What makes you think you'll be able to kill me? Maybe I'll kill you instead. Hero shook his head. I doubt that. But in the next second, he staggered and fell on one knee. The young man's face turned deathly pale, and with a pained groan, he suddenly vomited blood. A satisfied smile appeared on Sunny's face. Finally. Hero was standing on his knees, the lower part of his face covered in blood. Astonished, he was staring at his hands, trying to understand what had happened to him. What magic is this? With wide eyes and a pale face, he turned to Sunny. Was that thief right? Did you put the curse of the Shadow God on us? Sunny sighed. I wish that I had the ability to throw divine curses around, but no. To tell you the truth, I don't have any abilities at all. Then, how? The young slave shrugged. That's why I poisoned you all. Hero flinched, trying to comprehend his words. What? After the tyrant first attacked, you sent me to search for water. While gathering flagons from the dead soldiers, I squeezed bloodbane juice into each one. Except my own, of course. Not enough to taste it, but enough to slowly kill anyone who would drink from them. The soldier gritted his teeth, struggling through pain. A sudden realization appeared on his face. So that's why the other two were in such bad shape. Sunny nodded. Shifty drank the most, so his condition worsened the fastest. Scholar was also not long for this world, but you finished him off before the poison could. Yourself, however, it was as though bloodbane had no effect on you at all. I was really starting to get worried. Hero's face darkened. I see. I understand. He thought about something, then looked at Sunny with surprise. But back then you didn't know that we will turn on you. Sunny just laughed. Oh, please. It was obvious. Shifty was the kind of man who would kill for a pair of boots. Scholar was like a wolf in sheep's clothing. People are selfish and cruel in the best of situations. Was I supposed to believe that those two weren't going to do something terrible to me when faced with certain death? Hero spat more blood. Then, what about me? You. A disdainful expression appeared on Sunny's face. You are the worst of them. Why? Sunny looked at him and leaned forward. I might have not learned much in my short life, but I do know one thing, he said, all traces of humor gone from his voice. Now there was only cold, callous contempt. Sunny's face hardened as he spat. There is nothing more pathetic than a slave who begins to trust his slaver. Hearing these words, Hero lowered his head. I see. Then, suddenly, he laughed. You are a wicked little shit, aren't you? Sunny rolled his eyes. There's no need to be rude. But Hero wasn't listening to him. Good. This is good. My conscience will be clearer. The young slave sighed in irritation. What are you mumbling about? Just die already. Hero chuckled and suddenly pierced him with a stare. Somehow, he didn't look so sick anymore. You see, that plan would have worked if I was a normal human. But alas, my soul core has awakened long ago. I've slain countless enemies and absorbed their power. Bloodbane poison, unpleasant as it might be, can never kill me. Crap! Sunny turned around and tried to run away, but it was already too late. Something hit him in the back, sending his body crashing into the rock wall. With a scream, he felt a sharp pain piercing his left side. Rolling out of the cave, Sonny clutched his chest, scrambled back onto his feet, and ran, trying to escape the narrow crevice. He managed to reach the old path, finally being able to see the stars and the pale moon shining brightly in the night sky. But it was as far as he was able to get. Stop. As the cold voice sounded behind him, Sonny froze. If Hero really had an awakened soul core, he had no chances of getting away from him. In a fight, he had no chances at all. Turn around. The young slave obediently turned, holding his hands up. He looked at Hero, who was wiping the blood off his face with a displeased look in his eyes. The two of them stared at each other, shivering in the murderous cold. Was it worth it? No matter. Despite it all, I will be true to my promise. I'll make it quick. The soldier unsheathed his sword. Do you have any last words? Sonny did not answer. However, a small silver bell suddenly appeared in his hand. Hero frowned. Where were you hiding that thing? Sonny shook the bell. A beautiful, clear ringing sound flowed over the mountain, filling the night with an enchanting melody. What are you doing? Stop! The young slave dutifully stopped. What was? Right under Hero's bewildered eyes, the silver bell disappeared into thin air. He looked at Sonny, stumped and suspicious. Tell me, what did you just do? But Sonny didn't answer. In fact, he hadn't said a single word ever since escaping the cave. Right now, he wasn't even breathing. Hero, on the other hand, continued to speak. Tell me right now or you will regret it. He scowled. Why are you not saying anything? The shivering boy just stared at him, completely silent. No, he was staring into the darkness behind him. Hero's eyes widened. What? Chapter 14, Child of Shadows. Sonny had no choice but to resort to one last, desperate gamble. He had no chance against the enemy in a direct confrontation, at least not without an advantage. Bloodbane poison was supposed to be his hidden card, but turned out to be nearly useless. Being able to see in the dark did not help that much, too. Somehow, Hero was able to perceive their surroundings even without any light. Whether he was using his sense of hearing or some magical ability, Sonny did not know. Not that it mattered now that they had left the cave and were standing under the moonlit sky. Now he had only one advantage left. The fact that he knew that the tyrant was blind, and Hero did not. Acting on that knowledge, however, was easier said than done. But what else could he do? That's why he tried to stay as quiet as possible and rang the silver bell. If the description did not lie, its ringing could be heard from miles away. Surely, the tyrant was going to hear it, too. Now Sonny only had to stay silent, stall for time and hope that the monster would come. As he did so, Hero's bewilderment slowly turned into anger. Tell me right now or you will regret it. His voice was quite threatening, but still, the young slave did not answer. He just shivered in the cold, and tried not to moan despite the pulsing pain in his chest. "Why are you not answering?" But Sonny did not dare to answer. He held his breath and watched, horrified, as the familiar colossal figure appeared behind Hero. His lungs were on fire, and his heart was beating like crazy. It was beating so loud that he was even afraid that the blind tyrant would hear it. But of course, it couldn't be louder than Hero's voice, who was still talking, turning himself into the only source of noise on this mountain. At the last second, a hint of understanding appeared in the young soldier's eyes. He began to turn around, his sword rising with lightning speed. But it was too late. A massive hand appeared from the darkness and caught him into an iron grip. The bone claws scraped against the armor, pulling it apart. Mountain King dragged Hero back, paying little attention to the sword biting into its wrist. Viscous saliva was streaming from its open maw. Petrified by fear, Sonny slowly turned his back to them and took a couple of steps up the old, winding path. Then he darted away, running as fast as he could. Behind him, a desperate scream tore apart the silent night. Then a hungry roar followed. It seemed that Hero wasn't going down without a fight, even though his fate was already sealed. But Sonny didn't care. He was running away, climbing higher and higher. "I'm sorry, Hero," he thought. "I did say that I will watch you die, but, as you know, I am a liar. So go and die on your own." A lonesome dark mountain stood tall against the raging winds. Jagged and proud, it dwarfed other peaks of the mountain chain, cutting the night sky with its sharp edges. A radiant moon bathed its slopes in the ghostly light. Under that light, a young man with pale skin and black hair reached the peak of the mountain. However, his looks didn't match the magnificence of the scene. Wounded and staggering, he looked pathetic and weak. The young man looked like a walking corpse. His coarse tunic and cloak were torn and smeared with blood. His sunken eyes were cloudy and lifeless. His body was bruised, beaten, and cut. There were specks of bloody foam on his lips. He was hunched over, cradling the left side of his chest. Each step caused him to moan, ragged breath barely escaping through gritted teeth. Sonny was hurting all over. But most of all, he was cold. So cold. He just wanted to lie down in the snow and fall asleep. But instead, he continued walking. Because he believed that the nightmare will be over once he reaches the peak. Step. Step. Another step. Finally, he had made it. At the highest point of the mountain, a vast expanse of flat rock was covered with snow. In the center of it, illuminated by moonlight, stood a magnificent temple. Its colossal columns and walls were cut from black marble, with exquisite reliefs decorating the Stygian pediment and broad frieze. Beautiful and awesome, it looked like a palace of a dark god. At least it did once. Now, the temple was in ruins. Fractures and cracks marred the black stones, parts of the roof had collapsed, letting in ice and snow. Its tall gates were broken, as if smashed into pieces by a hand of a giant. Still, Sonny was satisfied. "Found you," he said in a hoarse voice. Gathering the last of his strength, the young slave slowly limped in the direction of the ruined temple. His thoughts were muddled and confused. See this, hero? He thought, forgetting for a second that Hero was already dead. I've made it. You were strong and ruthless, and I was weak and timid. Yet now you are a corpse, and I am still alive. Isn't it funny? He stumbled and groaned, feeling the edges of his broken ribs cutting deeper into his lungs. Blood was dripping from his mouth. Dead or not, Hero had gotten him good with that single strike. Actually, it's not. What do any of you even know about being ruthless? Poor fools. In the world where I come from, people had thousands of years to turn cruelty into an art. And as someone on the receiving end of all that cruelty, don't you think I would know more about being vicious than you ever could? He was getting closer to the temple. Truth be told, you never stood a chance. Wait. What was I thinking about? A moment later, he had already forgotten. There was only pain, the dark temple, and the overpowering desire to sleep. Don't fall for it. It's just hypothermia. If you fall asleep, you'll die. Finally, Sunny reached the steps of the Black Temple. He started to climb them, not noticing thousands of bones that were scattered around. These bones once belonged to humans and monsters both. All of them were killed by the invisible guardians still lingering around the temple. As Sunny was climbing the steps, one of the shapeless guardians approached him. It was ready to snuff out the spark of life that was burning weakly in the defiler's chest. But then stopped, sensing a faint, strangely familiar scent coming from his soul. The scent of divinity. Sorrowful and lonesome, the guardian moved aside, letting Sunny pass. Oblivious, he entered the temple. Sunny found himself in a grandiose hall. Cascades of moonlight were falling through the holes in the partially collapsed roof. Deep shadows were surrounding these circles of silver light, not daring to touch them. The floor was covered in snow and ice. At the far end of the hall, a large altar was cut from a single piece of black marble. It was the only thing inside the temple untouched by snow. Forgetting why he came here, Sunny headed for the altar. He just wanted to sleep. The altar was dry, clean, and as wide as a bed. Sunny climbed on it and lay down. It seemed like he was going to die. He was okay with it. Sunny tried to close his eyes, but was stopped by a sudden noise coming from the direction of the temple's entrance. He turned his head to look, not even a little bit curious. What he saw would have sent chills running down his spine if he wasn't so cold, tired, and indifferent. Mountain King was standing there, looking at him with its 5 blind eyes. He was still massive, terrifying, and revolting. Worm-like shapes were still moving frantically under its skin. It was sniffing the air, salivating. Then it opened its maw and moved forward, slowly approaching the altar. What an ugly bastard, Sunny thought, and suddenly clutched his chest, convulsing in a fit of torturous coughing. Bloody foam flew from his mouth and fell on the altar. However, the black marble soon absorbed it. A second later, it was as pristine as it was before. The tyrant was just about to reach Sunny. It was already stretching its hands to grab him. I guess this is the end, he thought, resigned to his fate. But at the last second, suddenly, The voice of the spell resounded in the dark temple. You have offered yourself as a sacrifice to the gods. The gods are dead, and cannot hear you. Your soul bears the mark of divinity. You are a temple slave. Shadow God stirs in his eternal slumber. He sends a blessing from beyond the grave. Child of shadows, receive your blessing. Under Sunny's astonished eyes, the shadows crowding the great hall suddenly moved, as though coming alive. Tentacles of darkness surged forward, entangling Mountain King's arms and legs. The mighty tyrant struggled, trying to get free. But how could it resist the power of a god? The shadows dragged Mountain King back, pulling in different directions. The tyrant opened its maw, and a furious howl escaped it. The next second, its body ruptured, torn apart into pieces. Blood, viscera, and severed limbs fell on the floor in a crimson torrent. Just like that, the horrible creature was dead. Sunny blinked. Once again, he was alone in the ruined temple. The great hall was dark and silent. And then the spell whispered, You have slain an awakened tyrant, Mountain King. Wake up, Sunless! Your nightmare is over. Prepare for appraisal.